districts. These were drawn up in 2021 after the 2020 census, but the reason this is going on now, 5 years later, after the 2020 census, is frankly because of some changes in the law and the fact that the Justice Department has warned Texas that it has got to fix problems with 4 current congressional districts, which frankly unconstitutionally, illegally used race as a predominant factor when they were drawing the lines, and you can't do that.
The Department of Justice has launched a criminal investigation into New York Attorney General Letitia James, claiming her civil fraud case against then-candidate Donald Trump was a violation of his constitutional rights. More from Fox's David Splund.
2 well-placed sources familiar with the probe tell Fox News that New York Attorney General Letitia James and her office is under investigation by the DOJ here in Washington. We're told that Attorney General Pam Bondi signed off on the probe. Subpoenas were sent to James's office, and there is a grand jury investigation underway in the New York State Capitol of Albany. The specific investigation, my colleague Jake Gibson, Ashley Oliver, and myself are being told involves deprivation of rights, which in plain language means someone in a position of legal authority violating someone else's constitutional or legal rights.
The Attorney General has previously claimed the administration's actions are political retaliation. There are indictments in a recent beating attack in Cincinnati. Here's Fox's Mike Tobin with more.
8 criminal charges for each of the 6 people arrested in connection with this viral mob beatdown video from Cincinnati. A grand jury in Hamilton County, Ohio, indicted the suspects with multiple counts of felonious assault, and aggravated rioting. Max penalty with convictions could be almost 30 years each. The woman who ended up the most shocking segment of the video is talking. She was punched in the face and hit the ground unconscious with her eyes wide open. Identifying herself only as Holly, she spoke on the Ingram Angle last night. With her face still showing injuries, Holly said the attack went on for much longer than the viral clips on social media. And she said she got involved because no one did anything other than stand around and shoot video with their phones.
When I realized the police weren't going to come, I could hear someone, the man that I jumped in front of, literally crying to God, please God, somebody save me, somebody help me.
We now know the man accused of punching Holly in the face has a record, including weapons and drug convictions.
A check of the tropics. Fox Weather says despite activity lingering in the Atlantic, it looks like we'll get through the second week of August without any impacts from hurricane season. But the third week of August may be a different story, as forecasters are eyeing a series of disturbances. Fox Weather's Craig Herrera.
That big bubble that I'm talking about here acts like a steering mechanism, and what comes off the coast of Africa may stay on the southern trajectory, which means we could be watching for impacts to land. So stay with us as we watch this, because we are starting to see things pick up.
The Gulf of America, the Caribbean, and waters off the southeast U.S. coast continue to have the warmest water temperatures. Any systems that reach those waters would have a higher chance to strengthen. If you live in Texas, listen up. It's tax-free weekend. The sales tax holiday began today and goes through midnight Sunday. Clothes, shoes, school supplies, and backpacks are among the items that are tax-free. And that's all our time for now. We invite you to find more news at afn.net. I'm Robert Thornton.
The mission of AFA is to inform, equip, and activate individuals and families to strengthen the moral foundations of American culture and give aid to the church here and abroad in its task of fulfilling the Great Commission. AFA upholds the truth that all human beings, including the unborn, are created in the image of God and are worthy of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Thank you for standing with the American Family Association. Hello, and welcome to the Dr. Nurse Mama Show, prescribing hope for healthy families here on American Family Radio. Here's your host, Professor, Pediatric Nurse Practitioner, and Mom of 4, Dr. Jessica Peck.
Well, hey there, friends, and welcome to my favorite day of the week. It's Friday. It's Friday, as my kids like to say, and we are getting to the middle of August already, which I just cannot believe. We are starting in the last quarter of the year. We are in the thick of back to school season, and we are just around the corner from fall. Now, if you live in the South like I do, fall is a little bit interesting. It just means that it's still 90 degrees, but we drink pumpkin spice and pretend to wear sweaters anyway, even though it's hot. But in this last quarter of the year and in this week, we've got some great news for you. I want to thank each and every one of you who participated in the Truth for Youth campaign this week with American Family Association. As of this morning, we are only 18,000 Bibles away from our goal. And yesterday, we have 46,000 Bibles that are already purchased to be given to teenagers across America, which is really exciting. And so we would love to be able to meet that goal. You can call 800-733-4737. That's 800-733-4737, or go online to TFY, that stands for Truth for Youth, TFY.org, and you can get a Bible to give away to a student who needs help and hope that is found in God's Word. So thank you all again for participating in that. And as we're on Friday and Ask Dr. Nurse Mama Friday, I'm going to be answering questions today about water safety. If you've been following along since January, we've been talking every Friday about a new habit for healthy families, about a habit that you can incorporate into your family life. We've been through spiritual disciplines, through schedule rhythms, through communication skills. We spent all summer talking about technology, and now we're moving into safety habits. We've talked about technology safety, we've talked about sun safety, and this week we're talking about water safety. And I have a lot of questions that I'm going to answer about brain-eating amoebas, about flash flooding, about swim lessons, a lot of common questions that I get about that. And I just encourage you to just think as we're going through this and just think about ways that you can make your family safe. Now, for me, having been a pediatric nurse practitioner, I have encountered a lot of very tragic situations where water safety was breached, where children, people of all ages experienced tragedy during water encounters. And that is something that we never, ever want to see. Now, water is one of God's greatest gifts. It's refreshing. It's life-giving. It's beautiful. It's often can be the place where our best memories are made. I love being by the water. I love just the beauty of God's creation. I love the peace that it brings. But water can also surprise us. It can be dangerous, and drowning is silent. Floods move fast. Currents pull without warning. And most of the time, when we experience danger with water, it happens very, very quickly. So as followers of Christ, we're called to love and protect others, and especially our families. So that means spending some time preparing, learning, and acting. So today I'm going to give you some really clear guidance and some resources and some faith-filled encouragement so your family can enjoy water safely, which is really important. Now, as I start with this, I want to tell you that actually more U.S. children ages 1 to 4 die from drowning than from any other cause. And that is really important. So especially for those kids. But I would be remiss if I didn't start the program talking about water safety without once again acknowledging the devastating Kerrville floods that have happened in my home state of Texas. And it is extremely heartbreaking for all of us. And we know that according to the latest statistics numbers that I was able to find, there were 107 deaths in the Kerrville floods, and 37 of those were children. And anytime we see children who have lost their lives in that great of numbers, any one number is just tragic, but that many, each number is a family. Each number is a story. Each number is a life that God cares deeply about. And I don't know if any of you saw this viral moment, but just last week, a young girl, a survivor of the Camp Mystic floods in Kerrville, Texas, she recently appeared on Fox News, and she sang her own lyrics, a rendition of the song Hallelujah that she wrote. And it moved me to tears just to see her strength, her courage, her faith. I know I've heard from several of you about that, how much that moved you. And she was able to meet her favorite singer, who is Lauren Daigle, after the performance. But that girl, she used the song to express her experience and her faith in the aftermath of devastating floods. And I thought, how many of us would be willing to go on national television like that and to share what God had laid on our hearts? I think we can learn from her courage. And I also want to ask you specifically to pray for the family of a little girl named Seal. I think it's Seal Stewart, Cile is how you spell her name. From the latest reports that I saw from the state government, she's an 8-year-old girl from Austin, and she is the only remaining missing girl from Camp Mystic. And I can't imagine what her family must be going through, just still looking for her. I want to thank all of the volunteers who have gone out to look for her. I just would ask you just to take a moment to pray for this little girl, pray for her family, pray that she would be found so that her family can have some closure. And to every family who has walked through any deep waters of loss from a water-related tragedy. I know we had a really good friend who was lost in a boating accident a couple of years ago. We've talked with his family here. I think of so many families that I know, and I know you know families as well. I just want to say my heart is really with you because no words can fully reach the pain that brings. But I want you to know you are not alone. We are grieving with you. We pray for you. We honor the lives and the memories of those people you love who you lost. And in moments when that grief feels overwhelming, I pray that you would find comfort in the promise of Isaiah 43. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. And your story matters. Your loved one's life matters, and your healing matters. I saw another story from one of the flood, the girls a teenage girl who was lost in the floods. Her parents were being interviewed and said that someone they didn't know had woken up a few days before the tragedy happened, and she felt like God had given her a vision of a girl with long brown hair who was being held by God's hands above the floodwaters. And she drew this picture and then saw the story of the girl who lost her life and sent that to her parents. And her parents appreciated that so much, just knowing that her life matters and that God was with her. And we are really committed to learning from these tragedies because, as I said last week, anytime I see any life lost through tragedy, you see their family making an urgent appeal. Please let their life matter. Let their life save another. And so I frame all of this to say, let's learn from those precious lives that mattered and do what we can. Of course, God is in control, but I pray that for those impacted, God's peace, which surpasses all understanding, which we definitely need because we do not understand the scale of tragedy, but may it guard your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. And so that is what we're going to talk about today. And let me just dive in to talk a little bit, and I did mean that pun there, why it is so important. We need to know that drowning is fast, drowning is quiet, drowning is most often preventable. So let's talk a little bit about how different kids can be at risk, because you may have different ages of kids around you. Now, toddlers age 0 to 4, one of the scariest things about toddlers and water safety is that they can drown in very small amounts of water. We're talking half an inch. We're talking a bathtub, a bucket, an inflatable pool, a toilet bowl, which because toddlers are top heavy, their head is much bigger than their body. They can fall into the toilet and they can't get themselves out. They're also very curious. They're very mobile. They don't know that to be afraid of hazards, and all of those things together means very high risk. So they need definitely supervision. Make sure that your toilet lids are closed, that your bathroom is closed, and none of these things are going to be absolutely proof that your kids will definitely be safe. But everything buys you time, and layered security is best. Now, those preschool and early school years, about ages 5 to 10, problems with them are that they're overconfident. They overestimate their ability in the water, and they love playing games like, how long can you hold your breath underwater? Or let's play underwater tag until our bodies are so tired they can't move anymore. And sometimes as adults, we have a little bit of overconfidence in what they can do. So we don't watch them as closely as we watch the younger ones. So that is really important. And when we have kids these ages swimming in the pools, it's really important to put them in brightly colored swimwear. You can go online and you can look at some pictures that will show you what different colors of swimsuits look like in the water. But generally speaking, bright orange, bright red, bright pink, all of those bright yellow, those colors are going to show up best. And try not to have swimsuits that blend in with the watercolors. That can be really dangerous. Now, when we get to the tween and in the teen stage, well, we've got peer pressure. We've got swimming at night more, which decreases visibility. We've got the potential for substance use. We've got risky stunts like let's jump off the roof or do a backflip or all of those kinds of things. And they definitely are swimming more unsupervised than younger kids are. So that can be really important. But even for those families of adults and seniors, look for family members who may be taking medication that will affect their ability to swim. Or maybe you unexpected currents, like you think, okay, I'm a pretty good swimmer, but I don't usually swim at the beach or the lake or the river. And of course, we just saw the tragic news of Malcolm Jamal Warner, who was a popular TV actor from the 80s who lost his life in a rip current. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So it really is important, and especially for diving. This is one of the biggest things that I hear from families and from working in the emergency room. Never, ever, ever dive into water that you don't know the depth, because we do see neck injuries and paralysis from that. And many of you are probably familiar with Joni Eareckson Tada, who was paralyzed as a teenager, several decades ago, and now is an outspoken advocate for people living with disabilities. So it's so important. And one of the hardest things about watching in water safety is that drowning is silent. So don't mistake quiet water for safe water. We need to make sure that we are on the lookout. So let's talk about some specific risks and some specific questions. I've been getting questions about flash flooding and how worried should we be about this? And flash floods actually move faster than you think. We are talking minutes, not hours. And there's a lot of people asking, how in the world could this have happened? But when you look at the way that the water rose in a matter of minutes, we're talking the feet by tens, like rising in a minute. It is so fast because especially here in the Texas Hill Country, we have a lot of smaller bodies of water that feed into larger bodies of water like the Guadalupe River. And so if all of those are rising at once, you're talking about, it is just astronomical how fast that can happen. And they're a storm killer because people underestimate them. You think, oh, I can drive through that water. Oh, I can walk through that water. That doesn't look too bad, but we underestimate the power of water. And flash floods and flood-related incidents, they are something to really be concerned about. So you should make sure that you go to the National Weather Service and that you are signed up for local alerts that will come to your phone. Your city can usually help you with this, tell you where to sign up, but usually going to the National Weather Service, you can get those alerts on your phone and just make sure that you're weather aware. Whether it's a tornado, whether it's a storm, whether it's a flash flood, just be ready. And some ways that you can prepare your family are to make sure that you're subscribed to local emergency alerts. Now, I know in the Kerrville floods, there's a lot of conversation going on about were those alerts sufficient. I think this is great because it is raising the conversation and raising the awareness. And I think we're going to likely see more alerts going forward, but make sure all of your family has that. Build a family go bag and have just an emergency kit that you can walk out the door with. Think about where would you go to get to high ground? Do you need medications? And when you are warned, move immediately to higher ground. Don't drive through floodwater. Floodwater as low as 2 feet can sweep many vehicles away. And if you are trapped, get to the highest point in that structure. And make sure that you're being careful with the water. Water can be contaminated after a flood. So make sure you know what to do before, during, and after a flood. And we'll talk when we come back about Naegleria fowleri. Now, I know that's a big word. I'll tell you all about it and how you can keep your family safe when we come back.
It doesn't matter how good a parent you are, there are forces at work in today's culture that can send your teen spinning out of control. Hi, I'm Mark Gregston with Parenting Today's Teens. Maybe you've just gone through a shouting match with your teen and you're asking yourself, what just happened? Maybe you've just discovered something ugly on his computer. Or maybe you caught your daughter lying to your face. To all of this, 2 simple words come to mind. When your family's in chaos, don't quit. And when your teen says he hates you, don't quit. When it's 3 a.m. and you have no idea where your teen is, don't quit. Whatever the situation, remember, God hasn't overlooked you. Rest in His presence and never, never quit.
Want more help from Mark Gregston? Find books and other resources online at parentingtodaysteens.org.
Hi, I'm Jan Harper. If you are a pastor's wife, come be encouraged and renewed as you share your challenges and stresses unique to pastors and their wives.
The AFA Pastors and Wives Fishbowl Retreat is coming October 28th through the 30th. You're invited to join us at Pickwick Landing State Park in Counce, Tennessee for 3 days of encouragement, renewal, and worship. Once again, Brother Bert Harper, AFA Director of Family and Pastoral Ministries, will host the retreat along with his wife Jan. Our special speaker will be J.J. Jasper of American Family Radio. If you've attended in the past, we'd love to see you again. And if you've never experienced a fishbowl retreat, we especially invite you to be refreshed and renewed. The per-couple admission price includes lodging, meals, and materials. Visit repairingthefoundations.net to learn more and register. That's repairingthefoundations.net.
The AFA Pastors and Wives Fishbowl Retreat. We'd love to see you there.
With today's Dr. Dobson Minute, here's Dr. James Dobson.
For my commentary today, I want to share a portion of a classic poem about old age written by Oliver Wendell Holmes. I think you'll like it. It's called The Last Leaf on the Tree. I saw him once before as he passed by the door, and again. The pavement stones resound as he toddles o'er the ground with his cane. They say that in his prime, ere the pruning knife of time cut him down, not a better man was found by the crier on his round through the town. And if I should live to be the last leaf on the tree in the spring, let them smile as I do now at the old forsaken bough where I cling. Is there a last leaf on the tree out there somewhere who needs a little encouragement today? Give him or her a call, won't you?
For more information on this topic, visit drdobsonminute.org.
Place to hide this weary soul, this bag of bones. I tried with all my might, but I just can't win the fight. I'm slowly drifting, a vagabond. And just when I
Welcome back, friends. That is I Thank God by House Fires, and I thank God for you. I thank God for you as our listeners. Thanks so much for listening in. I know you have a heart to keep your family healthy and safe, and I'm right here alongside you for the journey. I also am very thankful for your participation in our Truth for Youth campaign. This is a campaign that American Family Association is holding to give Bibles to teenagers who need them. You can call 800-733-4737. That's 800-733-4737, or go to TFY, that's truthforyouth.org, and you can donate Bibles to kids who need them. Now, today it is Ask Dr. Nurse Mama Friday. I'm answering questions about water. And water is all around us, and it really holds profound meaning in the Bible, because far beyond just physical necessity, keeping us hydrated, keeping us clean, water symbolizes life and spiritual cleansing and renewal and God-sustaining grace. And it's so interesting to me because from the very beginning, water is woven into God's story of creation and redemption, because in Genesis, we know that the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters, showing that even before the world took shape, God's presence was active and he was working to bring order and life and purpose. And throughout Scripture, water is also a very powerful metaphor for spiritual renewal, for transformation, because Jesus tells the Samaritan woman at the well, whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst, and points to the living water of the Holy Spirit that satisfies our deepest longings. And sometimes water can be a challenge. Even in the Bible, we read about storms that happen. And in those moments, God's presence always remains steady and reminds us that we serve a God who calms the waves, who brings peace into the storm. And just as Peter stepped out into the boat on that water by trusting Jesus, we too are invited to walk through life's turbulent waters with courage and faith. And we're talking today about some of the ways that water can be dangerous in our world. And I want to talk to you about a specific risk I've gotten a lot of questions about, called Naegleria fowleri. Okay, I have to look at that every time I say it. But this is going to sound really scary, but hang with me for just a minute. Some of you may have heard of it. But it is an amoeba. It is a tiny amoeba that lives in warm fresh water, and it can enter through your nose and attack your brain. It is very, very, very rare, but nearly always fatal. And what we saw in Texas this summer was a really tragic report of a Texas woman who was in her 70s, a healthy woman who died from an infection by this amoeba by using a sinus rinse from some water at a campsite. And she got the infection, and she passed away tragically. And we're so sorry to hear about that. And so this is something that I do hear about. As I said, is extremely rare, but I do know a family who was impacted by this. And so anytime you know a family, it's hard to think of that as being rare, and it is preventable. So this can happen because the amoeba lives in warm, fresh water. So anytime you have water going through your nose, that can happen swimming, diving, any other water activities where you have water going up your nose and you're in that body of water, especially warmer bodies of waters. And so from the nose, that amoeba travels along your olfactory nerve, which senses smell, and it goes through what's called the cribriform plate, and that's a thin bone that separates it from your brain. And it is really tragic because it can happen really, really quickly. So now that all of you are super afraid and thinking, okay, you just had brain-eating amoeba, that's horrible. Yes, it is absolutely horrible. But here are some ways to keep yourself safe from that. Avoid forceful head immersion. So if you're swimming in warm, untreated freshwater, natural lakes, rivers, warm ponds during hot months, don't jump in and let the water go up your nose. Hold your nose. Use a nose clip, which I say that's the guidance, but let's be real. No kid is going to say, oh, yes, Mom, please give me my nose clip. Now, some of them will use it, but that's not the norm. But the best thing is just to keep your head above the water. It only goes in through your nose. So if you're boating, if you're playing in shallow, warm, murky water, just don't let any water get up your nose. That's a good way to prevent infection. And avoid stirring up the sediments. So if there's murky stuff on the bottom of the water, try not to stir that up too much because that can increase the risk. And for sinus rinses, you should always talk to your primary care provider before doing any sort of sinus rinse. But if you do, make sure you ask them about precautions for water using distilled water and not tap water or other forms of safe water. So that's really important. And so for young kids, don't let them dunk their heads if at all possible. And for teenagers, just tell them to take precautions about trying to have water not come up their nose. So rare doesn't mean impossible. Just again, not getting your head under the water, not letting water up your nose, that can be a good way to prevent it. But it's something that I get a lot of questions about. Since the tragedy of the loss of life of Malcolm Jamal Warner, I've also gotten a lot of questions about rip currents and surf safety. Now, rip currents are invisible, deadly, and really very common at beaches. They can happen. And so, what we see many times is families who may take a vacation at the beach who aren't used to the beach water, the Gulf water, the ocean water, and they underestimate the danger that is there because most surf rescues that happen do involve rip currents, and even strong swimmers can get pulled out very, very fast. Now, again, I think about my own personal experience, and my family was on a beach vacation on the Texas Gulf Coast, and there was a father and a son who lost their lives to the rip current while we were there. It's something that really changes your perspective on how you look at things and think just to be a little more cautious. Now, I'll pause here and say that my family gives me a little bit of a hard time, but that's just the lens that I see the world in, because I see those things that can happen, and I think a little safety can just go a long way. Now, rip currents and surf zone fatalities count for about 100 deaths a year, and any one is very tragic. But if you have a life-guarded beach, that can really reduce risks. So first things that you want to look for, if you're a family with a beach vacation, try to go to an area where there is a lifeguard, and then look at the advisories. Many beaches have flag systems or sign systems, and pay attention to those warnings. I know growing up, I would hear when it's like, oh, it'll be fine. Oh, don't worry about that. But if those warnings are there, they're there for a reason. And so treat the ocean with respect, treat the Gulf with respect, treat that body of water with respect. That can happen. And how to recognize it is you may or may not be able to see it, but it looks like a narrow channel of choppy water, like a little stream. There might be some foam on top of that, or debris that's moving there, or a gap where the waves aren't breaking there. It just looks like it's almost like a glitch in what would be a pixelated picture. And if you're caught, the guidance is to don't fight it. You're supposed to just float and swim parallel to the shore until you're free of the current. And if you can't, just float and signal for help, because you will get really tired really quick. Again, that's why it's so great to be on a beach where there is a lifeguard, because they are trained to do rescues from rip currents and they know how to do that. So again, always swim near the lifeguards, obey the beach flags, obey the posted warnings, and never, ever swim alone. No matter where you're swimming, this is a really, really good piece of advice. And even I think of my mother-in-law falling in the pool once, where she was just outside watering her plants by herself. So it's just a good safety for anybody to always make sure that you have somebody else around when you're around a body of water. That's really important. And especially for families with toddlers, if you're on the beach, stay in the surf shallow, stay above the high tide line. Sand play is safer than wading in the strong surf. If they are there, they need to be in your hand, holding their hand, holding them, making sure that they are within arm's length of you. And that's really, really important to do. And you can go to the National Weather Service and NOAA. They have a great resource on rip currents. And they offer some advice on how to do that. And so that's really important. Now, another question that I get about water safety is swim lessons. And when should we do swim lessons? Now, swim lessons save lives, but no lesson alone can make any child drown proof. That is really important. Swim lessons are a layer of protection, but not a standalone fix. And each kid is different. So you should talk to your primary care provider about when your child will be ready for that. But generally speaking, the American Academy of Pediatrics supports swim lessons for many kids, even as early as 1, if they're developmentally ready. And again, that's where your primary care provider will help you with that, and emphasizes that layered protection, making sure that there are barriers to bodies of water around your house, that you're supervising them, that they're using life jackets, that you know CPR. Because as I shared with you at the beginning of the program, drowning is the leading cause of death for 1 to 4-year-olds. So you want to make sure that you have a healthy respect of the water and you start putting that layered protection. Now, I get a lot of questions about something called Infant Swimming Resource, ISR. And ISR is a program where it's basically teaching safety. It's not teaching kids how to swim. It's for really young kids. And you may have seen some videos of this, that if a toddler falls in the pool, it teaches them survival skills. How do they flip around, float on their back, and yell for help? They do this even with full clothes on by the end of the lesson. And this is a program that teaches, again, survival skills. How do you roll to your back? How do you breathe? How do you buy time? Now, some of the caveats for this is that there are really no official guidelines. It may work for some families. It should not be used as something that is drown proof. And you should talk to your primary care provider about if that's a good option for you and your family. And it is intensive. You've got to do a lot of lessons. You've got to have a highly trained instructor, and it can be expensive, and it can be difficult to find an instructor. But I can tell you there are several families that I've had in my practice who have told me stories that they really firmly believe that their toddlers' lives were saved through ISR and through Infant Swimming Resource. So that's something that you might want to check out, again, as a layer of protection. And so that's important to do. So lessons build skills, which are really important to do. But supervision is what saves lives. So having a lesson isn't a substitution for supervision. And so ISR swim lessons, they can create those critical seconds, but barriers, an adult's hand, adult's eyes are still the first line of defense. One of the things that we see with the advent of smartphones and mobile technology is that it's much more difficult for parents and grandparents to supervise while they're in the pool, because you get out there and you get on your phone and you think, okay, well, the kids all know how to swim. This is generally pretty safe. I'll be here if there's any emergencies. But again, drowning is silent. And when you have some of those risk factors that I talked about earlier, where kids will exhaust themselves before they know it, or they'll do things that are maybe unwise or risky without knowing it. Oh, let me just try this jump, or having a jumping contest or that kind of thing. The phone is distracting, so you really should make it a rule in your family that anybody who is watching the kids around water should not have their phone at all. They should have it somewhere where they can call in an emergency, but not be looking at it, because the other dangerous thing about a phone and supervising kids around bodies of water is that the phone makes you mobile. So you get a phone call. Hey, did you get this receipt? Did you check on this? Is so-and-so home? And all of a sudden you go to check and you get distracted, and distraction matters. So it's really important to have somebody there who is assigned to make sure that they are watching, that their eyes are not leaving the water. And that can be exhausting too. So switch out, and don't sit there the whole time. Just take 15-minute breaks and rotate. It's my turn to watch. It's your turn to watch. And especially kids who are not strong swimmers, who are young, they should always be within arm's length of that adult. That's really important. And I get a lot of questions too about backyard pools. What do I think about them is usually what I get. And I think pools can be great. Now, I live in a place where it is hotter than hot in the summer, and the pool can be a really fun way to cool off. But private pools and even small baby pools are where many home tragedies happen. And so that's important. So some of the things to think about with your pool is making sure that you have a fence. A fence can be a best defense. Studies show that there's a major risk reduction with fencing around the pool. But any kiddie pools or buckets, you should drain them immediately. Don't leave a kiddie pool out there thinking, oh, it's just a little bit of water, or a bucket with just a little bit of water, because that can be really dangerous. Another thing that's dangerous is toys that are left on the surface of the pool, because those can be an attractive nuisance. Little kids can go out there and reach for that toy and think, oh, I want to get that. And the next thing you know, they have fallen in. And so that can be important. And we should not over rely on inflatables or floaties. I actually don't recommend floaties on the arms. Those can slide off with sunscreen, and it gives parents kind of a false sense of security. And just think of, what are your friends that buy time? That's your barriers, your safety precautions, your life jackets, life vests. But supervision is what closes that loop. And when we come back, I'm going to talk to you about boat, lake, and river safety, and I'm going to tell you what you need to know about CPR. See you on the other side of this break.
I am thoroughly looking forward to our Weekend with AFA coming up in October, where we're going to be able to meet our supporters like yourself, to fellowship, to visit our facilities here in Tupelo, and to have everyone come together for a wonderful weekend.
It's a Weekend with AFA, Thursday, October 2nd through Saturday, October 4th in Tupelo, Mississippi. Speakers will include Abraham Hamilton III, Jenna Ellis, Tim Barton, Tim Wildman, and more. Register at afa.net/weekend.
When you hear this is American Family News. You know what follows is the truth. Your news from a Christian perspective.
Hundreds of teachers are going to have to walk into that school building, and they are forced to swallow political ideology that in many cases violates their very faith and conscience.
If you miss it at the top of the hour, American Family News podcasts are available at afn.net. And sign up for our daily news brief at afn.net.
It's Truth for Youth Bible Week. We'll give one free Truth for Youth Bible to every student between the ages of 13 and 18 who promises to pass it along to a friend. With it, more than 30,000 young people have come to Christ over the years.
So I tried to commit suicide and I was put in the hospital. One of my friends from school, she came up to me and just started visiting with me at the hospital, and she gave me a Truth for Youth Bible. So I haven't been the same since.
The Truth for Youth Bible consists of the entire New Testament and full-color comics, which present the gospel and moral truths. Parents can order the Bible on behalf of their son or daughter, or teens can call to get one.
We saw so many lives changed and seeds planted in the hearts of our students.
Visit tfy.org anytime or call 800-733-4737. That's 800-733-4737 between 8:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. to order or donate. It's Truth for Youth Bible Week with Revival Fires International.
Without even seeing them show up, I could feel like the darkness.
Jamie Sanchez is another Christian business proprietor who has been targeted for his faith. His Drip Cafe was opened to serve and help the homeless of downtown Denver.
We believe sex outside of marriage and homosexuality is a sin in God's eyes. And the enemy and his minions decided to use that as a platform.
Jesus told us persecution would come.
I would see them, just the rage and the hate. I pictured them doing that at the foot of the cross to Jesus. And I just remembered what he said, "Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do." And so I had to position my heart that way.
The Jamie Sanchez story is one of the videos of the Impact series at stream.afa.net.
It's been a crazy, crazy ride.
See Jamie's story and much more at stream.afa.net.
Even though I walk through the valley, sometimes it feels like I crawl through the valley. But I got a promise that I hold on tight to. I can't lose when I'm right beside you. Yeah, gotta know the plans you have for me when my cup is overflowing. So while I'm in the in-between, I'ma live my life knowing if I get down, you pick me up from the ground. You give me love that don't give out, giving no conditions. You lift me up and up again now. No matter who surrounds, I let my hallelujah get loud like a freight train, sunshine or rain. I lift you up and up again.
Welcome back, friends. That is Up and Up by Colton Dixon, and I hope that you are feeling up and up on this Friday. As my kids like to say, we have made it through the end of another week, and we are talking about 52 Habits for Healthy Families. We're in a segment where we're talking about safety, and I don't know about you, but my heart has just been so heavy. We have heard about so many high-profile water tragedies, the Kerrville floodings, the loss of Malcolm Jamal Warner, the loss of the woman I told you about who died from a brain amoeba, which is so tragic, and then even hearing about the sailing tragedy that happened in Miami. It just feels like every time we open the news, we can see news that is just so heartbreaking, so heart-wrenching. But we're here today to remember that God created water and it is beautiful. And Water in the Bible represents God's sustaining power, and his power is tremendous. His cleansing grace and the renewal that he offers to our lives. And just as water is essential to our physical survival, God's Spirit nourishes and refreshes our souls just like what physical water does for us, especially during difficult times. And I remember going through a particularly challenging season in my life and just feeling worn out and uncertain about the future. And there's something about taking a quiet walk by a body of water. And I did this, and I found myself really reflecting on Jesus' words about living water. And that satisfies our deepest needs. And that moment, just that moment, can help me shift my perspective, reminded me that even when life feels overwhelming, God's presence is steady, and he offers us renewal and peace. And like water in our world, God's grace is constant. It is available to cleanse, to restore, to strengthen us so that we can move forward with faith no matter what challenges we face. Now, let me tell you one more thing and answer a few more questions about boat, lake, and river safety before I talk to you about CPR. And this is really, really important. So hang in there with me. But let's talk about open bodies of water, lakes, rivers. Again, I live on the Texas Gulf Coast, so I am definitely surrounded by water. And there are some unique risks there. We've talked about rip currents. We've talked about submerged hazards. There can be sudden weather, and boating adds the risk of falls and drowning. So here are some specific safety rules for families around boats. As we've been seeing some boating tragedies, I've seen them in our community and seen them in our world. Life jackets always, 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 always for children, especially for non-swimmers. And make sure that you have a Coast Guard approved life jacket, especially on small boats. And it doesn't matter even if they're a really strong swimmer. Those open bodies of water or lakes or rivers, they again have unique risk. The depth can be unpredictable. There can be submerged objects that you can't see. They could have a vehicle come by, a jet ski or a boat, and it's so helpful if the person is wearing a life jacket. That's going to increase the risk of survival. That's really, really important. Another message that I will give that is a little bit sensitive and may step on some toes, but it's really important to avoid any sort of alcohol when you are operating boats or swimming or supervising kids in water, because alcohol impairs judgment, increases drowning risk, and that's something to really, really think about especially when you're supervising kids. Make sure you check the weather before you go out on a boat, because the weather can be really unpredictable, and just be overcautious. Just head in at the first sign of a squall. And for rivers, just make sure you're aware that swift currents and underwater obstructions can trap swimmers. So it's really important, again, just eyes on people at all times, making sure someone is watching for safety, because it can take a couple of minutes to recognize that their head hasn't come back up above the water, and that's all that it takes is a couple of minutes. So some other practical tips for boating and water safety: keep an emergency kit on board. So get one with a whistle or with an emergency radio, a throw rope with a ring on it, some basic first aid supplies. That's a really good thing to have on board. Make sure everybody knows whose life jacket is who and who's going to wear it when. And if someone is swept from a boat, throw the flotation device, call 911. Don't jump in unless you're trained or rescue gear is available. Now, I know we saw another story that just gripped our hearts again this summer, of a girl who was with her family on a cruise ship, and she fell over. I think she was 4 years old, and her dad heroically jumped in after her. And I know there are a lot of dads who say, I would do the same. And I think in that moment, dads are going to do what dads are going to do. And praise the Lord, both of them were okay. But these kinds of things can happen. But I think it's really important just to set those boundaries in the family, because sometimes your kids, especially your teenagers, they will resist that and think, I don't need a life jacket. A life jacket's not cool. Do you know how long it took me to pick this swimsuit or this outfit that I'm going to wear is going to give me weird tan lines? I mean, I've heard all of those things, but just making it non-negotiable, just saying, nope, we're wearing life jackets. That's non-negotiable. And don't be afraid just to hold fast to that. Don't be afraid to be that mom, to be that dad, to be that grandparent that just says, these are my non-negotiable rules. You use my boat, you use my pool, you follow my rules. I think that's really, really important. And the last thing that I wanted to talk to you about today in water safety is I want to talk to each and every one of you listening. I don't care if you're 18 or 80. I'm talking to you about CPR. Now, in a drowning emergency, every minute counts, and CPR doubles or triples survival chances. And so it's really a faith-filled invitation just to be prepared. And outside of water danger, sudden cardiac arrest can happen to anyone, anywhere, including children and adults at home. And it's kind of amazing how much this happens. I remember one specific instance where I was watching my son play Little League. He was at a baseball game and I was the mom in the stands just watching the game. And I was watching the umpire and he just started to look not well until the point where he was absolutely gray in the face. I saw him grab his left arm. The rest, you know, I knew what was happening, ran over to him, and thankfully we were able to intervene and his life was saved. But you never know when that can happen, including children and adults at home. And so again, that immediate CPR can really increase the risk of survival. So everyone should take CPR, especially grandparents. If you have little kids, CPR has changed. We do hands-only CPR now as what's recommended, and especially helping kids who are choking. All of those things, you can be prepared to go into action, and families are often the first responders. So being prepared can really save precious time. And so CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, life-saving technique, supports your circulation and breathing. It's really important. And again, we've moved to a really hands-only kind of CPR, which they'll tell you about in the class, but it's just all about keeping that heart pumping and how and when to use an AED if you have one. Now, we talk about how CPR saves lives through the chain of survival, and families are usually the first responders in this. So recognizing there's an emergency, calling 911, starting CPR to maintain that blood flow, and then knowing when or how to use the AED. And those things all happen before 911 first responders get there. And did you know the timing is critical, because every minute without CPR decreases your survival chances by about 10%. Now, that doesn't sound a lot, but 3 minutes in, we're 30% down. So immediate action is really vital. And so knowing how to do that CPR, whether it's hands only, it's infant and child CPR, using an AED, it's so important. And even choking, it will tell you how to respond to choking. So I really want to encourage every family listening out there to consider taking a CPR class. Having someone who is trained in CPR. You can find a lot of places for classes. You can go through the American Heart Association. You might try your local hospital or health clinic, call your fire department, your local EMS, check with your school. There's all kinds of CPR classes that you can take, and that will really build your confidence to act in an emergency. So if you have parents, as parents, you should do it. Older siblings who are watching younger siblings should do it. If your kids are babysitting, they should do it. If they're caregiving in any way, they should do it. That's really, really important. So I encourage you to think about that. Again, the American Red Cross, American Heart Association, the YMCA, all kinds. But this week, pick a date, maybe sign up as a family. Might be a really fun thing to do as a family to learn CPR. Teach older kids, how do you call 911? When do you call 911? And point to a trained adult. That is really, really important. So I encourage you to do that. And as we wrap up today, I just want to encourage you that water safety isn't just about avoiding danger. It's promoting whole family health and physical fitness and mental well-being and social connection and spiritual formation, all of those things. So let me review some recommendations for safety by age really quick as we end here. For infants and toddlers, just introduce them to the water early for comfort, for sensory development, lots of parent-child close contact, and use some of those survival programs only as a complement to supervision, not as a substitute. For school-age kids, make sure they have swim lessons. Make sure they know how to swim, how to have stamina, and recognize when they don't have it. What do they do when they're in trouble? Because having confidence in that is a great thing for kids. It can boost their mental health. For teens, teach them how to save lives. Teach them how to do CPR, how to watch other kids and help provide supervision. That's really important to do. And when we're looking at the water and we're looking at our families in the context of interacting with the water, whatever else we're doing that's active, healthy families protect bodies and calm minds, and they nourish souls. And that can be really, really important. So again, one of those, just a reminder on some of those safety items, just having that safe, making sure that you're making your family as safe as possible. Everybody wants their family to be safe in the water. So make sure you've got barriers. Think about where your kids have access to water and what kind of barriers are in the way to get there, whether that's a koi pond, a pond on your property, a bathtub, a toilet, a backyard pool. Where are the barriers in place to make sure that you have some time there? And then supervision. How and when and where are you supervising when your kids are around the water? What are the rules or standards? Or you just kind of take it as you go. Think about what are the guidelines that you're going to establish as a family for making sure that your kids have supervision around bodies of water. Now, this can be really important in going to other kids' houses where there are different rules. I remember very clearly taking my oldest to a birthday party when she was about 5 years old. And as I got there, I recognized that they were going to swim, and there were a lot of kids there and not a lot of adults there. And this was a party where the parents weren't staying. They were going to just drop off and come back. I always like to stay. None of the other parents were staying, but I said, you know what? I am staying. And that's okay. It's okay to do that. I've also had instances before where I've told my kids, nope, you're just not going to stay at this party, or you're not going to swim. You're going to stay on the outside. I don't feel confident enough about your safety to let you engage in that. And I care enough about you to let you be mad at me. That's okay to do. Make sure, so barriers, supervision, make sure that you're giving them the skills that they need, that they're learning how to swim, that they have the supplies that they need. Do they have life jackets? Do you have rescue tools? Do you have those resources that you might need for when you encounter water unexpectedly or in an emergency situation? And practice with your family. Talk about what would you do if that can happen. But most of all, I encourage you to pray for your family. Pray for your family's safety. I believe that prayers work. I've heard so many miraculous stories of prayer just miraculously saving people. And it's important for us to do that from a holistic lens. Just pray over your family's safety. It's so easy for us to be gripped by fear and then to try to control everything in our own power. We can do that. We can act as stewards of the life that God has given us. But we can also trust in a God who knows, who sees, who cares, and we can pray that He will also help keep our family safe. And I pray that the Lord will bless you and keep you and make His face to shine upon you and be gracious to you, and that He will give you peace. Well, thanks for joining us on this safety edition. We have a couple more weeks where we'll talk about some different kinds of safety. And next week, we have a great week lined up for you. Enjoy the rest of your Friday, and I'll see you right back here on Monday.